G'day from Australia. My name is Ashley Davis. Welcome to my coding live stream. This is recorded live but will be available on YouTube later. And you are watching me build a full stack application from scratch, and I'm doing my best to explain what I'm doing while I'm doing it. Please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. You can see my handle on the screen. Before we get into coding, I'll start with the tradition we have here in Australia. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I'm broadcasting. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. So these live streams are in support of my book, Rapid Full Stack Development. You can find it at rapidfullstackdevelopment.com. This book is really about foundations. Before you can be a fast developer, you need to work on your foundations. You need to have a development process that produces valuable and reliable code. Because if you don't have those things, there's no point being a fast coder. You can catch up on previous episodes of this live stream. This is the Code Capers page on YouTube. If you go to playlists and choose the Rapid Full Stack Development playlist, you can see yesterday's live stream and the previous live streams I've done for the back end. The code that's created in this series of live streams I'm putting on GitHub. So if you go to GitHub under the Rapid Full Stack Development page on GitHub, you can see that the code that I wrote in yesterday's session, the random gallery generator, is there. And the code that I'm writing in today's session will be there after the live stream today. We are building a photo gallery. So this is going to be the front end for the Photosphere application. It's going to look a bit like Google Photos, which is what you see here. Some nice photos of my cat here, Scarlet. Notice along the right-hand side that the photos are all lined up nicely. So they're all kind of filling the space nicely and lined up against the edge. That's the aim, really, at the end of this series of live streams, is to have something that looks like this and also that allows us to upload photos. But to get to that point, I'm working through a series of prototypes, and today, all that I want to do is I'm going to create a template for a front-end application based on React and using the Parcel bundler. And that's going to be a template that we're going to use for multiple prototypes in future sessions, and I'm also eventually going to base the front end for Photosphere on this template. So I'm going to be using the Parcel bundler, which is a really great alternative to Webpack. Really simple to use. It requires almost no configuration. And in fact, in this example that I'm using it in, there probably will be literally no configuration. I've done this before, and I've created this template before, but what I'm going to do in today's session is I'm going to create it from scratch. So what I'm doing to support my book is doing these live streams and going through and basically coding everything from the starting point. I'm working through towards the Photosphere front end, but I'm building everything from scratch. I'll come back to that documentation in just a moment. First, let's create a project. I'm creating a new directory here for my React Parcel template project. Now, like all node.js projects, I'm going to start by creating a node.js project, and we can do that using npm init-y. I've explained how this works in previous live streams, so hopefully you've watched those and you know what I'm talking about. Now I'm just going to put my terminal off to one side, and I'm going to have my Parcel documentation on the other side. I'm literally just going to follow the getting started guide. So there's nothing complicated here. You could follow along and you could build this template by yourself if you wanted to. So building a web application with Parcel, that's pretty much what we want. There's a bunch of other things in the documentation here that could be useful as well. There's React. So we're definitely going to want React soon. I might actually just open that in a tab now so I can get it later. Before I start trying to put React in this, I'm just going to take simple steps. That's what I do with my coding, is I'm always looking for the next simple step. So I'm just going to start with this real simple example here of using Parcel. We'll work through that. So I'm using npm, so I'm going to do an npm install save dev Parcel. So this is installing the Parcel dependency as a development dependency in my Node.js project. So I'm going to be using this template to create a bunch of prototypes in the coming live stream sessions. And for those prototypes, they're going to be throwaway code, so I don't really care about writing nice code or getting it set up properly or anything like that. This template is actually going to be used, ultimately I'm going to build a production front end on this template, so it is going to be important. And so I want to make sure I get everything in place just the way it should be, really. Okay, there we go. So we've got Parcel installed. I'm just going to open up Visual Studio Code. And just moving through the steps here. So it doesn't say it specifically here, but I can see from the next line where it's telling me how to run this, that it's put index.html under an src directory for source code. That's what I like to do anyway. I usually like to work that way and have an src directory, so I'm just going to do that. Under there, I'm going to create my index.html. So this is the entry point to my web application. I'm just going to copy the HTML they've got here. So nothing complicated so far. We can test this already. So you can see here's the command that we use to test it. And already we should have a basic web page. So we're using the Parcel dev server here. And in a moment, I'll show you how to build this to a static web page. We can see the web server is running on localhost 1234. So we've got our Hello World web page. So it's not particularly exciting yet. I'll just open that and leave that running. Okay, so moving on, we can add CSS. We can add JavaScript. So that's this whole section here. They literally just want us to add some links to CSS and a JavaScript file from our index.html just after the title there. And of course, I've got to actually add the CSS. So I'm creating a styles.css. This is where my CSS styling is going to go. I'm going to create here an index.js. So this is kind of the main JavaScript file for this web application. And it's just got a hello world in there. Let's just replicate that. Whenever you're following a tutorial like this or following a getting started guide, it's always good just to get it working as per their instructions. So that if you run into problems, well, hopefully you shouldn't run into problems, right? Because you're following their getting started instructions. But if you go off the beaten path, if you go off track, like you could put a problem in here and then not understand why it's not working and have to spend time, debugging that and fixing that. At least if we get it working according to their instructions, we'll know that it's working. And then we can go where we want it. We can take this where we want to go. What have I messed up here? Failed to resolve app.js. So I've already gone off the beaten path and shot myself in the foot here because it's supposed to be, as you can see here, it's, according to the tutorial, it's supposed to be app.js. I've already called it index.js, so I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to fix it. I could have avoided that problem by calling it the file app.js. So it looks like there's no errors. Let's just check the web page, and you can see that it's pink now, which is what our styling does to that font. It turns it into this hot pink color. Now, instead of running the command directly, npx parcel, we can set this up using package scripts, which is the next section here, which allows us to have like an npm start command and an npm run build command for starting our web page, dev server, the Parcel dev server, and also for building the static web page. So this time we're looking in the package.json file. So at this point, the package.json file is pretty much the default that we created, except we installed our Parcel here as a dev dependency. I'm just going to copy out these package scripts. Let's get them in there. So now that I've got that, I should be able to run an npm start to actually start the dev server. I'm missing something. So what I really should have done is copied over the full package.json file. And I can see what's here, what's missing. It's this source. So that's what's telling it which HTML file to build. Now, the other way I could get this working is I could just add that to each line there. That should work and be able to run Parcel against that entry point for the web page. But probably best just to follow their instructions to get this working. Like I said, we want our best starting point and we want it to work. So let's replace that. We don't need main as index.js. We don't need that for this project. So let's see if that gets a working npm start. So npm start is just a node.js convention. It makes it really easy to start any node.js projects, whether it's a static website or some kind of back-end server. When you get a node.js project, try running npm start. That usually works, but it depends on the programmer that put that project together. So this seems good. Let's just test the web page works. So I'm just going to do a refresh on that. So that's looking good. Now I'm running the build script here, running the Parcel build command, and this is going to create a static web page. And this produces a web page that can be run by any web server. So you can see here it's told us what its output. It's created an index.html and it's created a CSS file and a JavaScript file under the dist directory. I can use the ls command to have a look under there. And I could go in and I could start a web server in that directory if I wanted to, and I could test that that works, but I've done this many times, so I'm pretty sure that will be okay. At this point here, I've got a working project, but at the next point, I'm going to add React, and that could involve various problems. So I've got some working code here that I want to capture, I want to put aside, and I can do that using version control. So I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. I'm just get rid of those node modules and dist directories. Later on, I will add those to my git ignore file so that they won't go into git. It's just easier to remove them from the start. So I'm going to initialize a git repository here. I'll see what's going in, just double check. I don't want parcel cache. So let's just remove that parcel cache for the moment. Again, I could add that to my git ignore, and I will have to do that later. Let's just start simply. So I've got a source directory. Let's just remind ourselves of what's in there. Yep, the HTML, JSS, and CSS. And we've got our package files. So I think I'm ready to stage everything and then commit it. So this is just a basic Parcel setup for a static web page. Now, I don't think there's anything else in this getting started guide that I'm interested in, just a bit about declaring browser targets. That's something you probably want, we might want later. I'm not going to worry about it now. So let's just move on to the React documentation for Parcel. So this is the documentation that I found a little bit earlier that tells us how to add React to our Parcel project. It doesn't give npm install instructions this time, which is a bit weird. It only gives the yarn instructions. So I'll have to mentally translate that, which is slightly annoying, but not too hard to do. So I'm just going to take the packages that I want to install. I'm going to do an npm install on those. This time around, I'm not installing these as dev dependencies. You know, React and React DOM are like production dependencies of this web page. Not that it means much with a static web page, because we build it all out, and we take what we build and we put that on our web server anyway. So that distinction doesn't matter as much in this kind of project. And you can see here what I'm going to be doing next. I've got an index file to update and a JavaScript file, 2 JavaScript files for my React or my fledgling React application. Now I'm just going to do an npm start. I'll get the web page up as we follow the instructions. Let me just find the web page that I opened earlier. Okay. And I'm just going to put that up there, and I'll put my code down here. Not a lot of screen real estate on a laptop, so it's a little bit harder to do this kind of thing. But normally I work on a desktop, and I've got like 3 big screens. So you can imagine, having multiple windows side by side is a lot easier on a desktop computer. Let's just close everything down here, and we'll go into index.html. So what do I need here? So they've removed the styles. So it looks like they've removed the styles. But we want to keep that. We don't want to remove that. And it looks like they've removed or moved this index.js. So notice it's changed from app.js in the original getting started to index.js here. So that's a little bit of a conflict in their documentation, I think. But they've just moved that down to the body, and I don't think that really matters. But let's just keep it the same anyway. So I'm just going to move that down to the body. Oh, and we've got Hello World here, and they've got the div where we're going to insert the React application. So let's copy that out and replace Hello World with that. Okay, so what have they got in their index.js? So in their index.js, this is where they import React. So we'll go into our index.js and just replace the Hello World that we've got there with our basic React setup. And then they're also importing a file here called app. Just to avoid problems on Windows, I like to have all file names be lowercase. So I'm just going to change that. Now I've got to make that file. That file doesn't exist. So I'm creating a file called app.js, which is kind of the root of my web application here, which in their example is just printing Hello World again. So it's not going to be anything different to what we had before. It's just going to be implemented using React. Now the question is all this working? I can see the web page. I can refresh it. But at this point, I don't exactly know if it's working correctly or not. But what I can do is I can just go in here and change the message. And if this message changes then in the web page, at least I'll know it's going through React and that's working. And it did, so cool. So I've successfully just converted this over to React. It's a fairly simple process using Parcel. Much more complicated if you're using something like Webpack, I would say. There's also documentation here on TypeScript. So Parcel supports TypeScript out of the box, so we could easily convert this to a TypeScript project. So I think I'm about ready for a commit here, now that we've got React working. Again, I'll just do a git status. I just want to check what I'm doing. At this point, I'll invest in a git ignore file so that we can actually exclude some of these things that we don't want included in Git. Okay, so I'm just going to add a .git ignore file to my project here. And I basically just want to exclude these 3 things here. I'm just going to copy them from my terminal, put them in my git ignore. I'll fix the indenting, save that. And now if I do a get status now, those things should not be, there's something wrong. Oh, there's a space there. So you can see here that it's still recognizing Parcel cache as something that it wants to commit to the code repository. I think it's just because I've got a space here. I'm just going to delete that and try it again. Yeah, good. So you can see here now that it doesn't list any of those things that I just put in my git ignore file. It does say that we've got a git ignore file to go in, and I can keep this up to date in the future as well if there are, in the future, if there are things in this repo that I don't want to commit to git. Let's stage this for committing. I'll commit it. What are we doing here? So we've added React to the template. And if you do a git status now, you'll see that there's nothing there. It's all committed. So this code isn't on GitHub yet. By the time you watch this, if you're watching it on YouTube, by the time you watch this, the code will already be on GitHub, and you can have a look at it for yourself. Just quickly, I might show you how to test the static web page that we've built using this. So just as a reminder, I did this before, but if you do an npm run build, it will build a static version of this website into the dist directory. So a static website then is something that you can put on any web server. You can host this on any web server. So it's just building to that dist directory. You can see the results, the index file, the CSS, and the JSS file. And I should be able to run a web server here. I like to do this running live server. So you can get live server for yourself by doing an npm install -g. That gives you a real simple local web server that can be used to kind of serve up, simple web applications like this. You have to have built them first. You can use live server then to simulate what it would be like to run this in a production environment. Cool. So we've got a statically built version of our web page that says Hello Computer. So that's it for today. This is really just a short one, just getting our feet wet with some front-end development and creating a basic Parcel setup that includes React. So we can use React to make our web page. So these live streams are to support my book, Rapid Fullstack Development. Please feel free to check it out at rapidfullstackdevelopment.com. Thanks for listening. I'll be back again next week. Please keep an eye on Twitter and Twitch, and you'll see when I'm streaming again next. Bye-bye.